said last time, where I ended it. But I don't recall if my trip over to Europe, we of course took off in the Queen Elizabeth. We had, and I've always said I know there were close to 20,000 soldiers on board. Everything, the great kitchens and the dining halls were beautiful at one time, and they were all changed over, of course, and put little cots about 4 or 5 rows up where we slept. And of course, I always took the top cot, and it was hot because we had a blackout. You couldn't even smoke a cigarette outside or anything, and it was so hot that I remember one night on the steel floor I put my raincoat, which is very thin, you know, and kind of cool, and I slept on that. And I've never had a harder bed in all my life, unless it was a marble floor that I slept on later on, different times. But on that ship, we zigzagged all the way over to England because of the German submarines, and we had no escort. We only had an escort out for a little ways, and then we were left all alone to sail, just zigzagging, so that if a submarine had there in our periscope, then we could have just zigzagged, you know, and they'd have an awful time. They would have had to follow us all the way and change it, and that would have been a problem. So I guess we were just hoping and praying that no German submarine would catch us, because that would have been a mother of all ships going down, you know. But we, the lines were so long, of course, that we could only eat twice. We only got to our sandwich or whatever it was twice a day, because there's that many guys. They just couldn't keep it going. And I remember for breakfast all the eggs. I forgot how many tons of eggs that they, you know, that they made for the guys in the morning. And of course, all the way over there, we were thinking about combat and what was going to be like, and whether we were going to ever return back to our home or not, because we had no idea what was going to happen. And of course, we got to England, and the first thing they gave us pastry that had no sugar or salt or pepper or whatever, because they didn't have any of that. It was during war, and so it didn't taste that good. But we were just thankful for something else besides sea rations that we were going to eat from then on. And then of course, we got to England. The thing that surprised me about England was that it was so miniature compared to America. Everything seemed small, you know, places and paths and communities and all the rest of it. And but it didn't take long while we were stationed over there, getting ready to go over on Omaha Beach. That buzz bombs started. Well, they had been going over. The big buzz bombs that Hitler was sending over. It sounded like a great big diesel. We've heard them. And once it stops, it's over. You're gone, you know, because it comes straight down after the motor's cut out. And boy, they can damage a whole block at a time. It's really bad. And so we saw all the damage that was from that and from the German planes. But the English Air Force, they were very good. We'd see them fly up and fly over, and they would intercept the different planes that Hitler was sending over. All that kind of thing. Anyway, we got over to Europe, and I think I talked about that. Then the Battle of the Bulge began, and it was tough. We saw the Tiger tanks come across the Moselle River, which was the border of Germany and Luxembourg. And we were right there. Really, the Battle of the Bulge began about about 7 kilometers from where we were. That's where it began. But we were actually in the whole Battle of the Bulge, all the way to the end of the war, which ended up right next to Berlin over there in Czechoslovakia. So, and I told a little bit last time about going over and liberating the 101st Airborne Division out of Bastogne, and some of the things there. And after that, of course, we liberated, and 17,000 guys out of the 101st Airborne Division came out. We saw the trails of coming out, and you talk about a happy bunch. They said it's the best Christmas present they could ever have in all their life, ever would have. But after that, the battle kept on raging, of course, and it was over St. Vith, which I believe was about 40 miles from Bastogne. And the Germans were really pounding. They went around Bastogne and pounding some of the areas. And I remember we were traveling over there, and it was icy, and it was cold, and snow. Good thing it was icy, because the big tanks of our tanks that were rushing over there at St. Vith, they would have been ducks, because they would have just sunk down. They were so terrible heavy. I forget how many tons they were. And I know the general, he said, "Get your trucks off the road." He says, "My giants have to get through. There's an emergency." And so we all had to get way over the side of the road, let those great big things, when they roll by, the whole road shakes. They were so heavy. And so we began, and then of course I've got pictures of the town of St. Vith that was devastated. I had pictures of it before it was devastated. And so I have proof of all these things. In fact, St. Vith, we finally, because we were artillery that went wherever they needed extra firing power, or things were going rough and they were losing, 81st Field Artillery Battalion, we kept moving and moving and moving here and there and everywhere. And that was the main battle of beginning to stop the Battle of the Bulge of the German forces. And we started to head back towards Germany, pushing them all the way back. And we went through the Ardennes forest. You talk about fighting through a timber. That was something, getting our 98-pound projectiles to go through the trees, and not hit the trees, and lopping them and that kind of thing. And you could just see a picture I have is where the trees were even cut down from shrapnel and from artillery and from bombing and all the rest of it. So we fought through there. And I remember if I told you about the 265th Field Artillery Battalion were to our right. And out of that gang, I'd say in a battalion like ours, we had about 700 men. That was about it. And we heard the rumors later on how terrible it was. They were wiped out, were captured by Hitler's forces. And he captured, all of them died except about 70. And they had a pile of 70, and they began to shoot them, They had their white flags and everything. They wanted to give up, but Hitler says, don't let anybody surrender. Shoot them. And so out of that, it could have been us. It could have been us just as well as them, but thank God it wasn't.